Welcome to MGO Bucks. We are hearing some rumblings, some new rumors that Florida State might be coming to the Big Ten. And I think we heard some rumors about this like back in August before the season started.
Yeah.
Popping back up again. I think that's awesome. We're going to talk about that. We can maybe talk about who else would join Florida State. I mean, it wouldn't just be Florida State. Maybe some other teams in the ACC might join. We'll also talk about Donovan Edwards and TreVeyon Henderson, Michigan and Ohio State. Like there's some running backs. Those two dudes need to make some decisions. I could make an argument either way for those guys to either go to the NFL or to stay. But I don't know. How you been, Matt?
It's Friday, so I'm doing better now.
And it sounds like you have a big party happening right now. Is this with lots of girls?
Girls party downstairs, so you know how that is. Teenagers.
Ooh, no wonder you're drinking. No wonder. I should be drinking. But so let's talk about Florida State joining the Big Ten. I mean, huge. Either that or you're spreading fake news. But
I'm not spreading it.
I
guess we are potentially spreading it now. I saw it on Twitter, and we know how reliable Twitter sources are, especially mine. So, it's something that they've been wanting to do anyway, just from a purely financial standpoint, because the ACC is not making nearly as much. So they can join the Big Ten, make an extra $40 million plus. The options are Big Ten or SEC, and right now, they're getting screwed because of the bias of the SEC ESPN bias and the ESPN pushing the Alabama fourth spot over Florida State, and a lot of fans from Florida State feel like there's some sort of collusion going on, rightly or wrongly. And I think even DeSantis has said that he's going to try to allocate $1 million to try to have some lawsuits here against the College Football Playoff Committee. I'm sure that'll go nowhere, but it'll be entertaining nonetheless. But the other interesting thing that you already touched on is who else is going to lead the ACC, and it's going to be like the Pac-12, and who's going to be getting the scraps and the dead carcass that'll be remaining, like the two teams left. Like who's going to, like as soon as one jumps, the rest are going to be trying their damnedest not to be the Oregon State or Washington State of the ACC. So. I heard in the same rumor, they had mentioned that the SEC wasn't interested in them anyway, and they were looking at UVA and North Carolina. So, obviously those are two big programs, not necessarily for football as much, but just in general, they're two really good schools, more for basketball, I assume. But North Carolina is doing better in football. Virginia is just sort of, I don't know, I think they would be a better academic fit for the Big Ten.
Yeah, I mean, Clemson's in the ACC. I mean, it wouldn't just be FSU. It wouldn't just be them that joined. It would actually be maybe them and one other team, I imagine. But Clemson, that would be a great duo to join the Big Ten. That would make the Big Ten
So we're looking at this from purely a football standpoint, but everyone else is looking at for how many eyeballs are going to be added by a certain region that's going to be joining your conference, and how that affects the TV revenue and everything like that. So, I think Florida State would be the top choice. I think Clemson would be good, but I mean, honestly, I think North Carolina would probably be even better, just because North Carolina is such a big program.
It is North Carolina
all around.
I mean, the Big Ten would probably like to have Duke too. I mean, not necessarily just for football. Hey. Looks like Diego is joining us.
What's going on, guys?
The Maryland guy.
Well, I'm more than a Maryland guy today.
You're more than a Maryland guy today.
Yeah,
because I mean, Florida State, they got screwed. I know you have some strong feelings about that, Diego.
Before we get to your feelings of that, the funny thing is like with this whole conspiracy theory, I mean, ESPN has a deal with the ACC and the SEC, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, obviously, the majority of the people in ESPN were pushing Alabama, but they have a financial interest in the ACC as well. So that's kind of a weird conspiracy theory.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I don't know how this got exacerbated necessarily by the way Florida State was treated in the by the playoff committee, but it seems to have, ruffled some feathers to the point where they're just wanting to pound the table. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So apparently they're having a meeting here, within a month, and there's going to be a vote to see if Florida State's going to say screw it and try to get out.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. And Diego, it's over text. I know you and I kind of shared some of the same opinions on the way Florida State was treated, which is bizarre. You and I sharing the same opinions is like, yeah, it's crazy. So what are your thoughts around that? I mean, it's probably been talked to death about Florida State getting screwed or if they got screwed, but tell us the way you see it.
Well, I mean, obviously I haven't been on the show since it happened. And I do have strong feelings on it. As you know, from all the text messages I sent back and forth. And, I didn't go to Florida State. I don't know if you guys saw, I had the FSU background on, but apparently my computer does not want to work with the virtual backgrounds. But I think I made my point there. But, I get it. People think Alabama is good. And many people do think Alabama is one of the 4 best, but that shouldn't be what they're judging, because your gut feel isn't we don't play a full season so that a committee of 10 people can decide who the 4 best are to get into the playoff and have a chance at winning. We play the season to really truly reward the teams that have the best resumes. And so when you start injecting your gut feel and your knowledge of prestige in NCAA football into it, which is the reason why the Alabamas of the world would get in a situation where, they're going up against an undefeated conference champion like FSU, who, by the way, beat LSU and had another SEC win.
They crushed LSU when LSU was at full strength at that point too.
Right,
Towards the end of the year, LSU lost their whole secondary, so they were a shell of their former self.
Yeah, this process is fraudulent, and I'm not. Yeah, and Matt, you know me. I don't like to talk that way. I'm not a conspiracy guy. I reject wholeheartedly, Trumpisms talking about frauds and fake and this and that. I'm not like that. But I do think that FSU, what they did to FSU is almost as if there was a conspiracy against FSU. It's that egregious, in my opinion.
Just wanted to follow up on JJ's comment about Bama winning it all. I initially thought that, but the more that I dug in, their run defense is pretty suspect this year. This is definitely one of the weaker, even as they've been playing better towards the end of the year, it's still one of the weaker Bama teams in a while. They have a great secondary, but their run defense is definitely suspect. And, that just so happens to be the one thing that Michigan can do pretty good. Not as good as the last 2 years, but they're pretty proficient running. Look at Auburn. Auburn is a 6-6 team, and they ran all over them.
Guess who's playing Auburn?
The Maryland guy had to represent. Thank goodness we don't have a background. That's all I've got to say.
Yeah. Hold on. Let me say something controversial here. Let me say one thing real quick. Okay.
Be careful what you say. Last time you said something, I had to go back and edit.
There's a chance it would have gotten back to her, so it was probably a good idea.
Okay.
Anyway, let me just say this: the outcomes of the playoff games have nothing to do, like the future outcomes that are we're about to find out about, have nothing to do with whether Florida State should be selected for the playoff. Alabama could win the whole fucking thing, and it does not justify
it doesn't.
Committee made.
Correct.
And I don't hear enough people talking about that. If Florida State can go 13-0, play a tough non-conference schedule, what else can they do? What else can they do? And don't give me this crap about an injured quarterback. Is the NFL going to not allow? Are they going to retroactively take away the Giants' Super Bowl win because Hostetler won it instead of Phil Simms? I mean, it's
So,
an absolute
Diego,
joke
my
what
question
they did for
my
State.
question is that I don't know the answer to this, but there's a set of criteria that the playoff committee has, and they evaluate all those things. And we've discussed the final bullet point, which ESPN has been focusing on, was that you were allowed to take into account missing players or coaches
They should
in
not
making
be
your
able
decisions.
to,
Now,
right.
my question is, who made that part of the criteria? Did
ESPN
the
and
teams?
other
ESPN is not.
and
No,
advertisers.
they're just doing the show. So the playoff committee has this criteria. Did the schools have to agree to that, or is that something that they just randomly come up with?
I mean, whatever process there is for this committee having any power, that same process had to happen, I'm sure. Unless they
Yeah,
just
I'm just
give
wondering
them
how. I'm wondering how that happened. Like
Well, it's
who
possible.
set up the criteria?
Antoine's
Well,
right.
I
no,
mean,
it's
you
possible.
can focus on which parts of the criteria you want to put more weight on, so you can still get around it no matter what.
Right.
I was just curious who actually implemented that criteria.
Who knows?
So-
Who knows? And it could be that the committee was given carte blanche to come up with its own criteria once it
Well-
was set up and empowered.
It's exactly what Antoine's saying in this comment right here. He's saying the criteria is just set up so that you can explain away theft. Essentially, that's true. I mean, they put in that criteria to make it so that it could be ambiguous, and they could just like make a decision here or there whenever they want. So,
By the way, Nate, I appreciate that you used the word ambiguous and not vague, because I think sometimes people say vague when they mean ambiguous, and ambiguous when they mean vague.
Oh, good Lord. So here's my issue with the whole thing. And I think they probably did get the 4 best teams. It's okay. That's okay.
Again, that's
Here's
gut
my
feel.
issue.
We don't.
I know.
That's
I know
gut
how
feel.
you
And
feel.
the whole reason we play this thing is so that we don't crown a national champion based off of 12 games.
But I said that knowing that I had a big hairy butt coming around the corner. So, but they didn't. The committee didn't. So the quarterback got injured, and I can't remember exactly what week it was. But the very next
3 weeks ago,
the playoff committee, the committee didn't drop Florida State immediately.
That's the point I was going to make.
They did not drop the Florida State immediately. They didn't drop Florida State the next week. I mean,
they were just hoping. They were hoping that Georgia would take care of it, so they wouldn't have to make that decision.
The second to last rankings, Florida State was ranked number 4. Why didn't the committee enact that rule right when the quarterback got injured?
And then they're also saying that they're number 5. If you're going to say they're not as good as Alabama because they don't have their quarterback, well, then they're also worse than Georgia. They're also worse than Ohio State. They're also worse than Oregon. They're probably like the 10th team. You know,
they're ranked number 5
without their quarterback.
They're ranked number 5, and they're going to play Georgia. But the committee only enacted they only used that rule and compared to one team, Alabama and or 2 teams, really, Alabama and Texas.
Yeah, and then the other reason that they got screwed.
Any other team they're not consistent at all. That's where the fraudulence really comes in for me. The lack of consistency.
And the other reason, the other way that they got screwed was because Florida had a targeting call where they just destroyed their backup quarterback. And then they got stuck with this third string. You know, it's one thing. Most teams, most high caliber teams have good backup quarterback. Not many people can throw in their third string quarterback, even in FSU, in a conference championship game and expect decent results. Now their third string quarterback got 55 yards. Now they're offensively, they got more yards than Michigan did. That Michigan was playing an Iowa defense that's just infinitely better than Louisville. But they had a third string quarterback in there who wouldn't have been playing in the playoffs. So it was irrelevant what he did, right? The second string quarterback was a much more talented guy with more experience. He would have been the one playing, not the third stringer. So the people on the committee were saying, well, we saw the offense and it was abysmal. And, they're like looking at just this one game with the third stringer. They should be watching how the second stringer played if they're going to make that decision based off of that.
Yeah. I mean, Andrew brings up another great point. I brought up an NFL comparison, but obviously OSU and Cardale Jones, which I think we talked about him a couple weeks ago. I don't even remember what the context of that was, but I brought him up or you brought him up. Anyway, Cardale won the national title. He was what, third string or was he second string?
Third string. There's a bit of a difference with that though, because
I know, I want to hear it.
This guy got 55 yards rushing or 55 yards passing against Louisville, where we played Wisconsin, who was a better overall team that year. They were ranked like 10th or 11th. We go in there, and he had Cardale had only played like a half or so against Michigan because JT Barrett got hurt in that game, and that was the one where I was over at what, your house, Nate, or was it your house or Jason's house, where we were watching that game, and you guys were all smiling because even though at the time I think Ohio State may have been winning, I knew that our playoff hopes were screwed because JT Barrett just got hurt. So Cardale comes in against Wisconsin. They win 59-0. He has 270 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a bunch of rushing yards. And he was just amazing. The whole team was amazing, offense and defense. And everyone's like, well, and that was a really controversial year too, even with that beating, like because TCU and Baylor were just as good that year as we were. So
can I bring up an argument I've had with a listener / viewer? I think over the last couple of weeks, I think, what was his name? Nate, what's the guy's name who hates that I say that quarterback isn't the only thing that wins and loses games? What's his name?
not calling anyone out, Diego.
No, you brought him up. You said he called me out one of these episodes that I wasn't on, or one of these shows I wasn't on.
You should have been on. That was your fault.
Okay. So let me reiterate that I'm consistent. So I am saying that the FSU quarterback's injury should have no bearing on whether they make the playoff. Just like I said, quarterback is not the only reason why a team wins or loses. Because if that were the case,
Diego, do you remember
Jaden Daniels would be playing for the national title, and Caleb Williams would have played for the national title last year, and neither one of them is even close. All right,
Diego,
sorry, go ahead, Matt.
Do you remember when UC was a 1 seed in the playoffs and Kenyon Martin was their superstar and he got hurt right before the playoffs and the seeding, and so they bumped him down, UC down to a 2 seed because they lost their star player. Now that's a little bit of a different story because they hurt them, but they still got in. Well, no, but also they still got invited. They just got a lower seed.
Oh, I know.
Whereas FSU doesn't get. And then the other question I was going to ask you guys.
You're talking about 64 teams, but it's also different in that you're talking about 5 players versus 22 starting offensive and defensive players.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's even a little absurd. You have to judge the teams based on their resumes. Otherwise, you're injecting your own point of view as to what makes these teams win or lose. And let me tell you, last I checked, Ohio State, like you said, had a 3rd string quarterback win a national title. And what was the other guy? The other guy was Troy Smith was actually a stud, but he was a stud for 1 year. I mean, that's another guy. Didn't he come out of the blue?
At least 2 years. Troy Smith, at least 2 years.
All right. Anyway, well, he didn't do shit in the NFL. We know that.
That's true.
He actually had kind of bad luck though. He finally got someone got injured. He got the start. I think Flacco or whoever it was got injured. He got to start like a game or two, and then he got some sort of fluke illness or something, and then he couldn't play, and then his chance was gone. He never got even a chance to start again. He didn't play poorly.
If you're good, you stick around, you'll eventually get a chance. If you're really good.
Look at what Antoine's saying here. Like, it's true. Like the trenches, the offense.
Well, obviously.
I mean, that's if you've got a competent quarterback, I think Cade McNamara proved it. Like, if you can have a competent quarterback and go out and make the playoffs, if you've got an amazing offensive line. So I think that's a really, really good point.
But you guys don't have an amazing offensive line this year.
It's not as good, but it's still pretty good.
It's nowhere near what it was last year.
It's definitely
you guys are in the playoffs this year because Sam Still is a MVP of your team, and then JJ is light years better than what he was last year.
Well, he is. Those are all reasons.
Antoine, our defense is a lot better this year, Antoine. The difference is you guys actually, I guess the difference really is just our offensive line was just inferior this year. So like we built up the defense our defense did well enough, other than, our linebackers couldn't stop some of your tight ends. But really, it came down to offensive line not being able to hold up enough.
Oh,
or is
here we
it
go.
Or is it Ryan Day?
Ryan is on. Ryan, thanks for joining.
Ryan, we were just talking about you, buddy. We were just
Diego's
talking
been dodging you, is what's been happening. Diego was fearful. That's what it was.
No, I think Ryan. I wanted to point out, and I'll say it now that he's back on. Ryan likes to mischaracterize my statements. I don't know if it's intentional, like you guys do with politics every day,
You're just oversensitive,
or if it's not unintentional. But Ryan, I think we need to have a conversation after this to set the record straight.
Hold on, Antoine. So, Antoine, I would rate your offensive line in 2021 and 2022 pretty close to an A+. I would say this year they're like a B+, or like probably B+. So like A+ to B+. That's a substantial drop. I mean, they're still like very good, but it's not. I mean, it was light years the last 2 years. I mean, you remember like your running backs were going 5 yards before they were touched. Especially 2 years ago. But last year, they made the big blocks that got Edwards open on those huge runs. Like your line was just dominant. This year, it's not. JJ is why you guys are winning this year, not the offensive line.
Matt, can we talk? Matt, can we talk about your hat and why a guy who has a job wears a hat with that?
I'm going to wear this until it's completely disintegrated.
Yeah, what are you doing?
Yeah,
you're a grown man.
Anyway,
it's a little beaten up, but hey, I mean,
I don't think our D line was bad. This is like one of the better D lines we've had in like 4 or 5 years. Still not elite, but I think the real problem was our linebackers weren't quite up to par this year. Well, of course, the last 2 years, but our linebackers, especially in coverage. But I thought the defensive line was really good this year, even against Michigan. I thought it was good.
Ohio State's defensive line is kind of an enigma a little bit. Like against Michigan, those guys never show up. Like I don't hear your stars being called, like JTT and Jack Sawyer. I think was in on maybe like a half sack on JJ.
Michael Hall got a sack. He was really good against you guys. He had like a 90 PFF rating.
It was.
Now Tyleik Williams was great all year, but he didn't play well against Michigan.
Matt, take some scissors and cut the strings coming down from your hat.
Dude, let it go. I'm not. It's going to be. I'm just going to leave it here for you now.
It looks ridiculous. Anyway. All right. So,
well, hey, so let's talk about like part 2, next segment, and that's really Donovan Edwards and TreVeyon Henderson.
He's fighting that cough, that COVID cough he's had for 3 years.
Yeah, it came back. But and not just those two guys, but TreVeyon. Let's hear it from you, Matt. Like,
so are we just going to do like transfer portal from Ohio State and then Michigan potential?
Yeah.
Let's focus on OSU. So OSU could go either way. So like apparently Marvin Harrison Jr. might be coming back. TreVeyon Henderson might be coming back. Emeka Ibuka might be coming back. Our defensive linemen all might be coming back. I mean, none of these people have made a decision yet. Right after we lost to Michigan, I just assumed everyone was going pro because most of them are going to be first 3 rounders, right? Like our defensive line are going to be, first, second, or third rounders, all 4 of them. And our receivers, we have Marvin is going to be a top 3 pick. Emeka was coming into this year, he was going to be a first round pick. Now I'm thinking maybe later in the first round, early in the second, just because he was injured half the year. And so he also didn't have CJ Stroud throwing to him. And, God, it's hard. It's tough when you have Kyle just not able to really distribute well. I mean, he was throwing to Marvin like almost every time. Him or Cade seemed to get all the offense. So we are, it's just so many players. So right now it seems like Ohio State is either going to be giving Trey Henderson, $1 million to come back, or we're going to go after Etienne from Florida, who is down to, I guess, us in Georgia. And, whether we get him just depends on whether TreVeyon goes. So it's going to be one or the other. And but honestly, I'm fine with either. Both of those guys are amazing. So the main thing, though, that I think we're really in on a lot of players, like the A&M players. We have, I think we're probably going to get a left tackle from them, and then some linemen from other people. I mean, I think half of the A&M recruiting classes that were, those $70 million recruiting classes over the last few years, there were all these people. I wonder if any of them just didn't get any money because, like
Big
everyone was
Oil.
saying how,
No,
like
Big
they
Oil.
supposedly, why are they all leaving then?
Big Oil can pay. They're leaving because the coach is gone. That's why.
If they were getting paid, they wouldn't be leaving.
No, they're not going to stage it. They know they can make the money somewhere else. They're leaving because of the coach. They don't know who's going to go.
The coach was terrible. The coach was terrible.
That's the guy that recruited them. They're not going to leave. Jimbo
the bag man is who recruited the players.
If Jimbo leaves, you can understand why a bunch of players are going to want to leave when they know they can make a bunch of money anyway on Ohio State or Alabama or whatever. Why wouldn't they leave? I mean, come on. With the transfer portal, you're not going to keep players when your $10 million a year coach leaves, even if you think he sucked. Well, even if most of the country thinks he sucks. Obviously, they didn't think he sucked, or they wouldn't have signed there.
Well, can I say one thing about Kyle McCord? I've ever since he decided that he's leaving, I've become a big fan of Kyle McCord. I think it would be absolutely hilarious if he goes someplace like Nebraska or.
Well, that's where he's supposed to go.
Yeah, I've heard some rumblings about Nebraska, but
Yep.
How awesome would that be if all Ohio State had to do was wait for year 2 with the guy? I mean, it was his first year starting. He didn't look.
Is this like an LSU thing?
Not like that good. I mean, we're not talking about Joe Burrow good, but
yeah,
he's got the skill sets.
All I know is if I were Harbaugh, I would get McCord and pay him whatever it took, just because if he could win with him, it would just be like the total own of the century.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah.
Now, where's McCord from?
He's from California, I think.
East, I think, somewhere.
He's gonna want to go to Nebraska. Come on.
That depends. I mean, he's going where.
That's what the reporting. They're meeting with. This isn't just like Nebraska's interest. They've already been meeting with them.
I'd be surprised if all things being equal in terms of pay.
Yeah, one of our receivers is also meeting with Nebraska, so they might go with a package deal.
Why would you want to end up in Nebraska if you're an East or West Coaster? It's like culture shock.
If I think they would want to go there because they could get revenge against Ohio State potentially. If that's one of the reasons why.
You could do that at Rutgers.
Yeah, Rutgers. Yeah, Rutgers is a lot better now with their former Ohio State coach.
Ryan says he's from PA. So why isn't he? Yeah, he's not. I guess he can't transfer to Penn State. They got Aller. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't want to be in Nebraska. I heard there's nothing going on. I would not want to end up in Nebraska. I'd rather go to Minnesota or somewhere like that.
McCord's from Pennsylvania, Ryan.
Yeah, I know. Ryan just told us.
Nice.
Yeah,
okay.
You guys. Yeah, Matt, you should know that. That's a big fail on your part. Do your research.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, where's Fleming going? What do you think of Fleming?
Well, that's what they were saying. Fleming and McCord might go to Nebraska.
Oh, Fleming is the guy you were talking about? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
they would be an upgrade.
Season. I think Fleming could be good. I think he's just he was stuck on a team with so many good wide receivers. You stick him on a team with, so wide receivers, he could be a stud.
Well, he was a more average receiver than his rating was coming out of high school because he was
a top 2 or he was like a top 2
yeah,
or 3 receiver.
He was number 1 actually over
he all the way number 1? Yeah, I knew he was really high.
Maryland had a receiver who was number 2, and Fleming was 1.
Yeah, Fleming's a good blocker. He's really clutch on, third down conversions and stuff. But, even with Cal McCord, even with CJ Stroud, he wasn't elite. He again, he was injured a lot, but he just, he was not an elite college player. Because if you're not putting up big numbers, even with CJ, you're not going to be an elite guy.
Yeah, but I mean, how many balls are there to go around? So many.
With CJ, there was plenty. With CJ, there was plenty.
Yeah, and so switching this over to Michigan. So, one thing too, there's more star power in the portal this year than I can remember. Maybe I'm just not remembering the past years, but the star power, wow. Like the guys from Texas A&M, there's 2 defensive tackles from Texas A&M. Walter Nolan, I think, is one of them.
Yeah,
that are in the portal, and it's like, dude, whoever
he's going to be expensive. He's going to be expensive.
Schools can pay; they can pay. That's not an issue. But Donovan Edwards, another guy. Like, to me, he had a really good sophomore year. Obviously, last year, like unlike TreVeyon actually played really good down the stretch. Like I could see him going to the NFL and just because I don't know what else he can do. I mean, he played good down the stretch this past year.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense for him to come back unless a lot of them just want to come back to win a title or something.
But yeah, Donovan, I think Donovan probably is going to come back. I don't think he has a choice because
not to mention, why wouldn't he?
Anyway,
why wouldn't he?
Yeah, exactly. That's a good question. I mean, because after last year and the way he ran against Ohio State and in the Big Ten Championship and the way he exploded, it was a foregone conclusion he was leaving after this year. But no, not so much, I would say.
He had a bad year. Edwards had a terrible year.
Isn't Corum gone?
Yeah, Corum's gone after this.
Well, right. So now he can show he'll be the top back, most likely, right?
If he wins the job, he wasn't very good this year.
Nah, but the way he thinks, regardless of what actually happens, is now I can be the guy, and there's no reason for him not to come back if he can improve his draft stock.
It's a contract year, basically, for the guy. But he'll
get. Yeah, I mean he
Michigan too.
Huh?
I mean, a lot of people thought he was going to be higher than Corum anyway, drafted higher because he's a bigger playmaker.
Exactly.
Corum's not going to be a highly drafted running back.
Well, good, because he's a traitor.
I know what you mean. All right, guys. We're going to end this at the 32-minute mark. Thanks for joining. Diego, you haven't even gotten half in the bag yet. I just saw the whiskey you're drinking, but we're going to wrap it up. Guys, thanks for joining. Thanks, everyone in the chat. It's great talking to you. We will talk later, talk soon, and we are out. Take care.
Go Bucks.
You guys. Go Terps.
Go Blue.